8:30 and I'm up in one of my favourite vineyards here, and I think I just got up here just in time. It was very cloudy, but I think the sun is just going to peek through while I'm doing the ramble, so that's great. Good morning, Mimi. Great to see you. So I'm not by myself this morning. I have a little friend. Thanks to Karen for my little, it's actually a tea cozy. It's my little goat tea cozy. So I brought him with me this morning because we are going to be talking goats a bit later on. So goats, chèvre in French. Chèvre, bouc is a ram, and a chèvre is a kid goat. Chèvre. So chèvre and chèvre. I think I got that right. Jean-Marc kept correcting me this morning with the chèvre, but I believe that is a tiny goat. But first things first, let's locate ourselves as the sun just coming up. Yeah, look, oh, Mum and Dad. Oh, I can see Auntie Jane's here, Uncle Ed's here too in Broadbottom, and Auntie Jane saying hello to Mum. So Mum and Dad, hope you're there. And guess where I am this morning? I'll give you a little clue. So I'm now looking over towards the coast, and behind the rocks there that are just in the mist, behind there, they're the rocks of Vangro. Behind there we have the Mediterranean. They're just in the Roussillon. Beyond there we have the beaches of Leucate, La Palme, Fitou. If you go a little more in this direction, you would have Collioure. Collioure is absolutely lovely. Collioure, Bagnols, Port-Bou over on the Mediterranean. But it's a bit difficult to see that because I'm in a little hollow here. You see, I'm sort of in a little dip. Oh, bah, bah. Let's get some sheep on the screen. Sheep or goats. If you've got goats, even better. And panning round, so you can see I'm quite high up here. I've got an amazing view over the valley. And right in the background, I can just make out the Château d'Aguilar. It's on one of those little hills in the background. So Château d'Aguilar. Beyond that is Narbonne, the road to Narbonne. So Narbonne about an hour and a quarter, and that's the rest of the Languedoc going in that direction. And then if I pan around here, as you can see, I'm sort of down in a little... Oh, there are goats. Thanks, Steve. The goats, Vivian, Nikki, a sheep and a goat. Lisa, I've got a whole herd. Great. So no, it's not Sandrock, but I'm actually at the same height as Sandrock. So just turning around here, not much to see apart from sort of scrub garrigue land. But this is what goats absolutely love to eat. And that's why goats are really, really important, or were important down here, because they just eat their way through things like this. So just, don't know, I haven't seen anybody come up with where we are. Let me get the tea towel out and give you just a short pan round again so you can see. So it's actually made up of 5 little plots of vines. I absolutely love this vineyard. 5 little plots of different grape varieties, all old vines. And you can see the sun. Just hoping we're going to get a snippet of the sun. Not La Cown either. Okay, I have my tea towel ready. So here is the tea towel. So here is Touchon, and I've actually driven out of Touchon this morning, and I've gone past Les Cruzes. I've actually come through Paziol. So Paziol, we all know the phrase now, tuer de Paziol. Basically it means, are you a little bit stupid? If somebody from Touchon says, are you from Paziol? And I'm almost off the tea towel. I've come right up here to Col de la Lauze. So almost off the tea towel, Col de la Lauze, little, and you can see the 5 little tiny vineyards here at 300 meters. So it's a little small parcel of tiny old vines, which is just absolutely beautiful, and a very sentimental vineyard too. So this is the bench that Jean-Marc built, and 7 years ago, in the month of January, this is where he actually proposed to me. So it's such a wonderfully romantic vineyard. Having said that, Jean-Marc absolutely hates this vineyard. I'm just going to take you for a quick stroll around it. He hates it because it's really difficult to access. He had to create a path to get the tractor down here, because when I bought it, it was just a little tiny footpath. So you can imagine like a footpath to do all the work in the vineyard and also to harvest everything as well. Not very practical at all, but there's just something about this little tiny vineyard, Col de la Lauze. So up here above Paziol. Hi Tim, good to see you. I'm in Paziol. I'm above the village of Paziol this morning, Col de la Lauze, or the Pilou. So this is where I have one of my most romantic vineyards. This is where Jean-Marc proposed to me 7 years ago. He actually built a bench, which you've just seen. Good to see you, Joe, too. 7-year itch. I'm glad there's a wink after that. No 7-year itch here at all. So 7 years ago, this is where Jean-Marc proposed. And he chose this vineyard because it is one of my favourite. Just look at that view. The sun's just coming up. I'm looking over old Carignan vines here. So this is a little tiny plot of old Carignan vines. And then if I just hop and skip over a little bit further here, we've actually got a little tiny plot of Macabeu. And the Macabeu are so tightly planted together that you can't even get Mignon de Cheniard, the little tractor, through. So they're planted in a diamond shape rather than crisscross. And I think the owner who planted these like 70 years ago just wanted to get the maximum amount of vines on here. So here, the Macabeu vineyard. And then over, you see these, it hasn't been top pruned yet, as you can see. And when I come down here, I think, I must get in and do the top pruning. Wouldn't it be lovely? So I think this will be my challenge for the weekend, to come and top prune. Look at the view as well. Just take that view in. So we're above Paziol, looking over towards Touchon. And I was going to show you this, a pile of stones. So these stones, they're sort of galets roulés, lovely rounded stones, have come off the vineyard and would just have been piled up along the edges. You can just see at the top some more vines peeping over the top, and they are my Grenache. So I've got Grenache, Carignan, Macabeu, and I've also got some hairy Grenache in this vineyard too. So I've got a big variety, which makes it quite complicated to work, hence why Jean-Marc really hates it. And he didn't want me to buy this. This was the vineyard, don't know if you remember this was the vineyard that I came to see by myself. I fell in love with it, and I said to Jean-Marc, we need to buy this vineyard. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I was obviously referring to the view. And when he came up at lunchtime to have a look, he just went, no way, Katie, there's no way that we're buying this. It's going to cost us so much money to work these vines for such a small yield. It's just not economically viable. And then we went back to the lady, said, okay, sorry, we can't buy this little plot. And she said, okay, I've got some others down on the plain. So we went down, looked at some others, which were really good too, bought those. Next day she phoned back, she said, look, I'm going to throw in those 5 little plots of vineyards at the top of Paziol completely free. So I'll give you those if you take the others. So I was really happy, Jean-Marc less so, but that's how we acquired this little vineyard. And unfortunately, we don't really have the time to come and sit on the little bench down here. But there were the grapes that we grow here. So the Macabeu goes into my single variety Macabeu. So it goes into Vieux Cépage Macabeu wine. And the Carignan and the Grenache and the hairy Grenache go into my Fitou blend. So let's just have it. It's quite damp this morning. I don't know what the weather's. A bog-off deal. It was indeed a bog-off deal on the vineyard. Buy one, get one free. And that is the real shame of vineyards down here. The old vines, nobody can really afford to work them, especially if you're in a cooperative system. They cost so much. There's so much intensive sort of labour needed on them, especially as we're organic as well. So very difficult to farm, and in the cooperative system you just can't get your money back on them. Hence people, they do come up for sale. Just look at that view. Where's Mr. Sunshine? Oh, Lisa, the Macabeu is your favourite. Excellent. Well, here you go. This is where some of it comes from. Let's look at that wonderful little vineyard here. So this is where we started this morning. Morning, Monsieur Chèvre. So this is a goat. And I was going to talk to you a little bit about goats as I ramble back up to the car in this vineyard. So goats, chèvre. Now we looked at the sheep on Saturday, but goats were actually even more important for the economy of Tucson, or for family, for households. Goats were known as the poor man's cow. Basically, every single household had a goat. So they all had at least one or two goats. So we're talking about in the 1840s, which is the earliest number I've got, there were 2,000 goats in Tucson. So 2,000 goats. Some people had two. The bigger families had up to 200 in their herd of goats, but most people had one or two. And do you know where they slept? They actually slept downstairs in the garage under the stairs. So the goats in the houses slept under the stairs, and probably with the horse at the time. And in the morning the families would open the door and the little goats would go trotting off by themselves to meet the shepherd. And there was a communal shepherd, so there was a village shepherd, and he used to take everybody's goats at 8 o'clock in the morning and he would walk them up to the garrigue. So he would walk them up to the scrubland so that they could feed, and then he would walk them back down again at 18h, so at 6 o'clock in the evening. The little goats would all come back with the shepherd, and the goats, they knew where their house was. So the goats, again, would all just go home by themselves. So they just walk back to their house, and that's when they would be milked by the family, and they would get 2 to 3 litres of goat's milk per goat. So you can imagine it must have been quite exciting. You'd have about 700 goats every morning and every evening going through the village of Tucson. The problem with that, though, goats eat everything, and they didn't always wait until they got to the garrigue to start eating. So they would munch their way through flowers. If people had to take in their potted geranium flowers that were on the windowsill when the goats were going by. Otherwise, they just got eaten. So there were so many goats in about 1840s that the town hall actually limited the amount of goats that a family could have. Can you imagine, like, being limited? So you were limited to 12 goats per family. 12 goats, and they also taxed them. They were actually taxed more than sheep. And the problem was that the goats were eating all of the garrigue, the grass, everything they could get their hands on, and the sheep didn't have enough to eat. And the sheep actually brought in more money because they had the wool and the meat. So the wool and the meat was for the sheep, and the sheep are actually the butchers own flocks of sheep, whereas private people had goats. Just have a look at this lovely vineyard. So this now is the Grenache plot. So a little plot of Grenache as I walk my way back up here, and we can just look back over where I was just now. So this is a little plot of Carignan in the foreground, and then a Macabre in the background, and you can see the Grenache up on the top too. 12 goats, yeah, great name for wine it is, isn't it? And they taxed the goats, so each family was taxed per number of goats they had. But families really, this area is really quite poor, well, very poor. It's one of the poorest areas in France, and at that time would have been really cut off. So goats were a vital part of food or resource for families because it provided the milk. They also made cheese. I saw that somebody mentioned goat's cheese. Each family used to make their own goat's cheese as well from the milk. And then they used to eat goat. Goat used to be on the menu of quite a few families, and especially kids, little goats, at Easter, because most of the goats would have kids in the winter, and then they would be eaten as the Easter meal. Oh, look. I wonder if that sun is going to rise. Actually, I was speaking to Jean-Marc. You can see there's a little green face there, James. probably referring to when I was talking about the goats, but he said it was absolutely delicious. And Jean-Marc knows a thing or two about food, I think, but he said he has wonderful memories of goat. There we go. So goats really important, and they remained important right up until 1948, and then they completely disappeared. Now, they were getting a bit annoyed, as I said, because the goats were eating the sheep's food, and they also, once the vines started to be planted, they also started nibbling away at vines. So they were seen as a bit of a pest towards the end. But I found 2 reasons why the goats actually disappeared. It's me going uphill. Let me catch my breath at the top of the hill. And the goats disappeared. Firstly, in Touchon, especially from 1948, the last village shepherd died, and they couldn't find anybody to replace him, and so everybody sold the goats they had. It was one reason. And then I also read in Paziol that there was a big outbreak of Maltese fever, which isn't foot and mouth, but it is a disease, an animal disease, which can be spread to humans. And apparently that killed off most of the goats in the village of Paziol. So unfortunately, since then, there have been absolutely, I don't know, any goats in the village at all. Fanny's brought back her sheep, which is great, but goats just literally disappeared. Perhaps that's an idea. Wouldn't that be lovely? Bring back a few goats. Who thinks that's a good idea? Chocolate Maltesers. No, goats. Bring the goats back. Oh, who's been here? The wild boar, been out scruffing around. And then next to that, we've got some wild asparagus plant too. Wild, and just over here, we've got some fennel here, and just up here, and this is what the goats would love to eat, so they were perfect. They would just eat all the scrubland. Some rosemary, excellent. Oh, and it's just coming into flower, so pretty. So again, these big rounded pudding stones, les puddings, and then the view over, that's a hairy grenache there, so that's the last of the 5th of the 5 little parcels. And then can just see the village of Paziol in the distance. And then the Toche mountain vaguely coming out of the cloud this morning. So goats were vital to the economy of this area. They ate the meat, they made cheese, and they drank the milk from them. And then if I came up here as well to show you this. So just on the top of my vineyard, there's a little, what is known as a bergerie. So these were built around about 1840s, 50s, and it was to shelter the sheep. People didn't live in them. Sometimes they would just leave the sheep out up here in a bergerie. So there's quite a few little bergeries. You can see the top of it. It's all a bit overgrown here to get in. But wouldn't that be wonderful to do that up as a tasting room? And then you'd have this wonderful view here. So that was my little ramble up here in Col de la Lauze above Paziol. Let me see, I've just got one question. Anybody got any other questions? And I've got another idea for the competition for winning herbs. So if you'd like to win a packet of dried organic herbs from our vineyard, like the rosemary we've just seen, then if you take a picture of where you are now, or watching me, or the view from your window, just something you're doing now, the weather, the view. If you're not on your phone, you could take a picture of looking at me and this scene on your computer. Then just put it onto Instagram, post it onto Instagram, tag Domaine Jones, so you just put @Domaine Jones, as a tag, and if it appears on my wall, then I will send you a packet of wild herbs. So that's anybody this morning up until 12 o'clock. If you put up a photo of where you are now, what you're doing, if you're in bed, don't worry, look out the window, take a photo from out of the window, post it up, and if you say what you particularly like about my rambles, and I will send anybody who puts one up, you will get some wild herbs. So it has to be up before midday. So let's have a look at the questions. And we could have a little question now as well while I'm looking at these. What is the name of a male goat? A male goat. So Nikki, thank you for this question. While we wait to hear what a male goat is called. Was it a surprise when he proposed? It was, and it was even more of a surprise when Jean-Marc proposed to me 7 years ago that he'd actually, a male goat, James, that's a goat, like that's a sort of female goat, I think. Male goat we're looking for. It was a surprise 7 years ago, and it was so much of a surprise it actually built a bench in his least favourite vineyard, which is actually my favourite vineyard. So anybody, I did mention it really briefly this morning, a male goat. What is the name of a male goat? I suppose that's a ram in normal English, a ram. And Pad 02, is there much of a goat presence today? Monsieur Chev, no, it's not Monsieur Chev. No, unfortunately, there's hardly any. Well, there's no goats that I know of. We used to have 2. Oh, Grumpy Amazon, you're almost there with Book. It sounds like that. It's spelled a little bit differently. So a male goat is a... I'll just wait for one more to see if anybody gets it. Kevin, you've just joined us. We've almost finished. So a male goat is actually a bouc, which is B-O-U-C. So now you've learnt something. A ram in French, really useful. Chèvre bouc. Adam, well done. It's bouc. B-O-U-C. You've learnt a really useful French word. Billy goat. Oh yeah, rams are sheep. Oh my God, I'm so silly. Right, yeah, it's a billy goat. No, I was being goofy, Kate. So it's a billy goat is a bouc. So have I confused you completely? A bouc is a billy goat. And the expression, today's expression is the bouc émissaire, which is a scapegoat. Bouc émissaire, a scapegoat. So you've learned the word for a billy goat, a bouc, and also a scapegoat, a bouc émissaire. Wow. And it's not even 9 o'clock in France. It's not even 8 o'clock in the UK. So thanks for joining me, everybody. I'm going to be back on Saturday. So on Saturday, I think I'm going to try and look at the honeymaker. So if anybody would like to join me to look at the honeymaker, there's a honeymaker in Touchon. I'm going to try and link that up. So it's on Saturday. It's at tea time. So it's 4 o'clock in the UK and it's at 5 o'clock in France. And we'll be rambling, quick ramble for 20 minutes, hopefully taking in the honeymaker in Touchon. So thanks everybody for joining me. See you on Saturday. Bye everybody.